What's going on, boys and girls? It is your boy Temp Sits. I'm at Coast Yamaha today, taking out the new Kawasaki 400. So, let's jump on. So today, obviously, we're on the Kawasaki 400, which is new. It's only sort of been officially released in the last week or so. So it's about time that they finally did a little bit to the 300, because that was pretty unchanged for the last few years. Really, the 300s, other than, you know, changing the colour schemes every couple of years. So yeah, this is pretty cool. Pretty bare bones basic learner bike. Biggest differences with the 400 compared to the 300, obviously the extra 100cc, and then cosmetic changes. They've taken a few design cues from a couple of different other bikes that they've made. You know, size wise it's pretty close to the 650 Ninja nowadays, and that back seat looks pretty cool. I'm pretty impressed with what they did with that. Taking a few visual styling cues from the H2, which is not a bad thing. You know, it's not a boring looking bike, the H2. So this thing, obviously 400cc, its closest competitors are like the CBR 500, the Duke 390, and then sort of the MT-07. It's probably similar sort of price to the MT-07. So it's about $6,500 on road here. Sorry, no, it's not. It's about $6,500 plus on roads. It's like a rough sort of guide. Tell you what, these headlights look pretty cool. I like how the new headlights look. They look a lot cooler than the old ones, and they both turn on, which is sick. What else? Seating wise, it's not super amazing comfy. It doesn't feel uncomfortable yet, but I just got on it. So yeah, it's a little bit different. Feels alright. So we're going to see if it sort of compares to some of those other bikes. So just recently taken out the 390, so that's fresh in my mind. And not too long ago I accidentally deleted the 300 review, so this will be nice to replace it. So the dash, part analog, part digital, which is sort of the go-to. I like it. I probably prefer an analog tacho personally. Tell you what, this does alright. Feels like it's got a bit more up and go to it than the Duke 390. Does have an extra cylinder though, so that one, the pistons are only working half. The pistons are only half the size as the 390s. But yeah, it feels quite nimble and agile as you'd expect it to, being a small learner bike. Pretty goofy looking mirrors it's got, but you know, pretty good visibility, which is what you'd like as a learner. Does also just have the single-sided front brake disc, so it's just got the one brake disc on the front, but it's a light bike going for a cheap price point, so that's sort of what they do. Also, it's got this this newer style tank, so it looks a little bit sleeker than the old 300s did. It's very similar style wise to the Z125, which is also, you know, new in their lineup. Which is nice for dudes with the long legs, because your knees fit nicely into that tank. You know, that's what it's all about. And you've got that little back pillion seat pushing right up into your your bottom with this, so that's cool. What else does it have on its display? It's got a little gear indicator, which is nice. You've got your pretty basic dash there, and then you can cycle through stuff. You don't have any power modes or anything, which you wouldn't expect on a 400cc bike. You're not dealing with a whole lot of power. So yeah, I think roughly 35 kilowatts this puts out, and it's apparently a little bit lighter than the 300. So yeah, I mean, if you're after a cheap bike and you want a new bike, the 300s are going for an absolute stomper of a deal at Coasties at the moment, because these are in, so they're getting rid of them very cheap. Oh, it's alright. It's quicker than 390 up to 100, it feels. I mean, we're in an 80 zone, but yeah, it feels like it gets up and boogies a little bit quicker. You can really rev this thing out as well. Red line's at 11,500 RPM. It just takes a little while to get to that top end. But gets there pretty smoothly, pretty nicely, which is what you want. That's the thing about these bikes, is they're sort of at the point where you can almost compete with most of the cars on the road. Most regular cars on the road, speed-wise, is a handy thing. I mean, the 150 I started on, it was slow as shit. So it's a little bit faster, which is safe, but it's also not a super choppy throttle or anything that feels like it's trying to buck you off. These sort of bikes you got to work pretty hard at to wheelie, which is not the worst thing for learners. And then because you got sort of that clip-on position, it feels like it leans into the corners nicely. Yeah, we're going in 5th gear. It's got 6 gears, so you can sit in 6th gear at 80 at 5,000 Ks. 5,000 Ks is pretty quick. 6th gear at 5,000 RPM, and then you roll onto the throttle and it eventually gets up and going. But an overdrive gear isn't designed to be doing max speeds, but it is a good indicator of torque if you sort of sit in a higher gear and see how it pulls. So something can be said about riding incorrectly. So, do I recommend something like this over the Duke 390 or even MT-07? They're all sort of... The Lamb's MT-07 we're talking about, obviously, that's restricted. They're all sort of similar-ish price-wise. It's not a huge amount of difference. The MT-07's a bit more. The KTM's around about the same. I mean, the biggest thing really is, style preference. That's sort of what comes into it the most, is which bike you think looks the prettiest. The good thing about the Ninjas is they're quite low. Shorter people can ride them a little bit easier, which is definitely a selling point. It's not something that overly appeals to me, but I'm a big boy. Yeah, so it feels pretty cruisy through these corners. We'll see how that brake goes around here and how the 0 to 100 goes. But I'd say it'd be sort of comparable with the 390. So if you want a sort of naked bike that you're going to feel a bit more hooligan-y on, the 390, the MT-07's the way to go. If you're a smaller person, you like the race bike look, I mean, that's obviously what Kawasaki are going for here, then pick that. Yeah, if you want a good deal on one of these, go down to Coasties, see the boys, tell them Temp Sit sent you. I mean, the thing with little bikes like this is you can sit there. Ooh, look at a little bit of wobbles at the... doesn't like no hands. Probably because it's not heavy. The thing with the little bikes like these is you can go around and you can absolutely wring their necks, and they're going to take a beating, and you can learn to be a bad rider on them and they'll still operate just fine because Kawasaki make a decent bike. A bit of gravel here. That brake felt pretty nice. And then we're going to go. And that's the 0 to 100. So yeah, pretty similar sort of times to the 390. Obviously it depends how big you are to get a little bit of difference on that. So a bike like this probably doesn't make as much sense in the States, unless you're quite a small person. But in Australia, you've got to have a learner bike for, depending on your state, a year and a half of when you first start riding. So you could probably buy one of these and pay it off in the year and a half if you're working and you wanted to go down that option, which probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Something like a 400 over a 250, you do have that little bit extra power, so it's not quite as annoying and as outgrowable as a 250 is initially. Obviously everyone gets bored of their bikes eventually, but something like this, you know, you'd be able to tolerate for a little bit longer. I reckon you'd be able to squeeze a year and a half out of one of these and then go on to a big boy bike when you're on your full license. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And if you went and hit the riders every weekend, if you went and hit the hills every weekend, you'd probably be a better rider than me, even if you're on one of these, you know. That's the thing. I mean, a bike's still a bike, and that translates. So the best way to get experience is to ride as many different roads and different environments and different bikes as you possibly can to get as much experience as you can, because that's how it works, you know. You want 99 bike riding. It's unfortunate with those, because the front cowling's so far away from you, the mirrors have to stick out so far to sort of get that angle of being able to see without being bar and mirrors, because I think bar and mirrors struggle a bit to stay ADR approved. As a learner, very important to have good mirrors. Sometimes function over form. I know you never thought you'd hear Tempsitz say that, who wears a tinted visor at night. Yeah. So, Tempsitz's overall impression of the Ninja 400. Well, it's a pretty tidy bike. It's a very, very nicely styled bike. It's very capable for a learner. You know, you can still go quick enough to lose your license if that's what you wanted to do. You can probably still beat a few cars and drag races. You can go for rides with your mates, which is what it's all about. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of negatives of this bike really, other than being a little bit slower, not powered, and being a little bit small. But that's the name of the game sometimes, isn't it? So, gotta do what you gotta do. But I think if you've got the cash for one of these, you can definitely feel that first gear come into power band. It's like, hello, now we're moving. That's nice though. With a really, really shitty launch, it still got up and moved pretty quickly. So yeah, this seat though, my bum's already getting a bit sore on it. Maybe I'm just used to that life of luxury from the CB, but I definitely wouldn't want to do a whole lot of commuting on this. I think there's better bikes to get if you're looking on commuting to work every day. But if you're just looking for a bike to sort of ride on the weekend and ride with your mates, is a bit better for it. I don't think it's quite perfect daily commuting. You could do it, absolutely. But you know, there's comfier bikes. The cool thing about these learner bikes is they're all pretty forgiving. You know, if you were to sit in first gear and accidentally wrench on the throttle like a dingbat because you're not used to feathering the throttle, you know, it didn't sort of hit power in first till halfway up the rev range, which is good. I mean, that's enough time for you to realize, oh hey, hold on, I'm going to die here, and rein it back in. Which is probably the point when they fueled it. and they made this bike, they go, hey, how about we don't make a bike that lets people kill themselves? That's what the leader bikes are for. So I'm pretty impressed with this altogether. I think it's a great little package, and I reckon it looks pretty sick, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. If you're into that sort of thing, I think it looks cool. Not quite as cool as an XSR 700, but that also costs a bit more money. So, if you're a short, cashed up person, I recommend getting one of these bad boys. And that's the final say on it. Temps it's out. Peace!